17 centuries ago, the most sought-after minds in the Roman Empire could not be reached. They had walked into the Egyptian desert to escape other people, and the world followed them there. That is not a story about monks. There is a name for what they were, and for what you are. There is a kind of person who has always been here. They go by different names in different centuries. The cunning woman, the hermit, the witness, the seer, the exile. The world has tried more than once to be rid of them. The world has never managed it. If you carry one of these patterns, you already know. Today the hermit, the lantern-bearer, the one who walks away from the village, and in walking away finds the thing the village needs most. If you have ever disappeared on people you love, this is your story, and the name is the least of it. Around the year 270, in a farming village on the Nile, a young man named Antony heard a single sentence read aloud in church and let it dismantle his life. He sold the family land, he gave the money away, and he began walking away from people, first to the edge of the village, then to the tombs beyond it, then across the river to an abandoned Roman fort at Pispia, where he shut the door and stayed for 20 years. Here is the strange part. The world would not leave him alone. Visitors camped outside the walls. They passed bread over the ramparts. They begged him through the stones. Eventually they tore the door off its hinges to get to him. And Athanasius, the bishop who wrote his biography, records what walked out. Not a ruin, not a madman withered by isolation, a man described as balanced, clear, and strangely whole, as though the 20 years had assembled him rather than eroded him. Within a generation, thousands had followed him into the sand. Athanasius wrote that the desert had become a city. The Greeks had a word for what these people were doing. Anacharesis, withdrawal. It is the root of our word anchorite, and in Roman Egypt it was already a known act before the monks claimed it. When the tax burden became unbearable, peasants would simply vanish from the registers and walk into the desert. Withdrawal was not collapse, it was refusal. The empire understood it as a threat for exactly that reason. You know how strange this sounds. You also know, somewhere under the strangeness, that it does not sound strange at all. Because the desert record keeps repeating one detail the modern world cannot digest. These people were not misanthropes. Hospitality was a rule of the desert. A visitor was received, fed, and heard. Pilgrims travelled for weeks to ask a single question. The answers were kept, copied, and passed down as the sayings of the desert fathers and mothers. Abba Moses told one seeker, "Go and sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything." Amma Syncletica taught that it is possible to be solitary in mind while living in a crowd, and to be crowded with thoughts while living alone. These were the most consulted minds of their age. What they refused was not people, it was access. Constant, unbroken, unearned access. They had noticed something precise about the human instrument. A certain kind of perception dies in constant company. The self that survives the crowd is a costume stitched for the crowd's comfort. And the only way to find out what is underneath it is to take it somewhere it cannot perform. 16 centuries later, a Swiss psychiatrist quietly proved the pattern had survived. Carl Jung built himself a stone tower at Bollingen on the shore of a lake. No electricity, no telephone. He withdrew there again and again for the rest of his life, and wrote that he was most deeply himself in the tower. Jung gave the costume a name, the persona, the personality built for survival among others, which grows so loud over the years that the person underneath can no longer be heard. Antony's visitors understood something we have forgotten. They did not want his absence. They wanted what his absence had made of him. That is the detail that history keeps recording, and it did not stay in the desert. You recognize this. Not from history books, from Tuesday evenings, from the message you read and could not answer. Not because you did not care. Because something in you was gasping for air it could not name. From the invitations you declined with a guilt you could not explain. From the strange relief of a cancelled plan. You have been walking toward your own desert for years, in small apologetic steps, and calling it a character flaw the entire way. It is not a flaw, it is the hermit, the lantern-bearer, one of the 7 Sigma INFJ archetypes and the one the modern world understands least. What the desert called anachoresis, Jung recognized as a movement of individuation, the deliberate separation from collective expectation without which a real self cannot form. This is not a supernatural claim, it is a description of how introverted intuition protects its own instrument. Perception is the hermit's inheritance, and perception is precisely what constant access destroys. You have been told that your disappearing is coldness, rudeness, a defect in your love. Look at the record. The hermit does not leave because the fire has gone out. The hermit leaves because the fire is what is being protected. Rome could not follow Antony into the desert. The empire you live under is more patient than Rome. It fits in your pocket. It calls itself connection. It has trained the people around you to read availability as love and silence as attack. It rewards the instant reply, the open door, the self that is always reachable, because a person who is always reachable is easy to manage. It is an empire of access. And it has spent your whole life teaching you that your withdrawal is a symptom. 17 centuries of noise, and still it has not bred the pattern out of the human line. The lineage that walked into the sand did not die there. It went underground, the way surviving things do, and it surfaces generation after generation in the people who feel their own mind going quiet in company, the ones who know they must leave to retrieve it. It is surfacing now in you. And the name is the least of it, because the hermit does not just inherit permission, the hermit inherits a lantern, and a lantern is a responsibility. Here is what the lantern means. The desert teachers called the cell a workshop, not a hiding place. A workshop. The hermit withdraws to see and returns carrying something usable, light that was fetched from the dark on behalf of people who could not go there themselves. Your solitude has never been an escape, whatever you were told. It is tending. It is the slow repair of an instrument that constant company blunts. But every inheritance carries a shadow, and the hermit carries two. The first is the door that rusts shut. Withdrawal that begins in clarity can curdle into contempt. You leave to hear your own mind and stay away to keep score. You begin cataloguing everyone's failures from a safe distance and calling the catalogue wisdom. That is not the lantern, that is the dark, wearing the lantern's clothes. The desert knew this, which is why hospitality was law there. The withdrawal always had a rhythm. You go out, you return. The hermit who never returns has not completed the pattern. They have abandoned it halfway. The second shadow is the guilt. The hand that reaches for the phone the moment the silence starts working. The apology you draft for an absence no one has yet questioned. The reflex that treats your own recovery as a crime against other people's comfort. That reflex was installed, and it was not installed for your benefit. So learn the distinction the lineage kept. Loneliness is the ache of going unwitnessed. Solitude is finally witnessing yourself. They can look identical from the outside. They are opposites underneath. I have watched this pattern for a long time, and the ones who learn its rhythm stop apologizing for either half of it. They leave cleanly, without cruelty and without more explanation than kindness requires. And they return cleanly, carrying more than they left with. The people who love them learn the rhythm too, or reveal that what they loved was the access. Both answers are information. Both are survivable. If you have ever vanished from everyone, just to hear your own mind again, tell me in the comments what the silence showed you. Some of the truest writing on this channel lives below the videos, not in them. I read every word. And if this video named the leaving, the seer video names what you see once the noise stops. It is waiting for you when this one ends. If this has landed somewhere it needed to land, then you may already know what comes next. There are 7 Sigma INFJ archetypes, and each one carries a different gift, a different burden, a different mythic responsibility. The link in the description will take you to a free assessment that reveals yours. It takes about 3 minutes. The answer tends to land harder than people expect. And if you want to keep walking these threads with me, into the deeper psychology of the Sigma INFJ, into the archetypes the world has forgotten how to name, subscribe. There are far older and stranger things still to uncover. Until next time, find your power, know your myth,